And welcome back to the NFLandU podcast. It's Tuesday, November 19th. We made it, people. Just a couple more weeks left of the NFL season. We gotten through week 11, and it was an interesting week 11. We had a little bit of everything. If you liked sloppy offensive football, we had a couple games for you. If you like teams choking away big leads, we had a game for you. If you liked high-scoring football coming down to the wire, we had a game for you. A little bit of everything this Week 11 in the NFL. So today we're going to recap everything that happened Sunday and Monday, all the games and everything. Then we're going to get into a preview of Thursday Night Football between the Colts and Texans, which is shaping up to be actually a pretty fun one. First place in the AFC South on the line this Thursday night. So with all that being said, why not get into it with the first of our games, Dallas at Detroit. Cowboys win a surprisingly close one, in my opinion. Cowboys win 35-27. Dallas improves to 6-4 on the year. Really needed that one. And Detroit continues to fall at 3-6-1. The big story about this game was Dak Prescott. He had an absolutely massive day for the Cowboys, and that big day from him all around is what helped them to win it. Dak Prescott on the day went 29-46 for 444 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 sack. Just an incredibly great day from Dak Prescott all around. But you look at the stats and see, oh, Dak Prescott had a big day. He must have been throwing it from the beginning. Well, the Cowboys really shot themselves in the foot at the beginning of this game like they've done the last couple of weeks. Ezekiel Elliott fumbled on the first run of the game. Lions recover, and they score a touchdown with Bo Scarborough, of all people, former Cowboys running back that they took in the 7th round of the draft about a year ago, actually. So a very big surprise to start this game. Cowboys already in a 7-0 hole, but after that they started to battle back and were able to regain the lead. But speaking to shooting themselves in the foot, I guess this is just going to be what the Cowboys are going forward, is they're going to have to dig themselves out of a hole each and every week that they themselves do. Because remember, in Minnesota last week, first play of the game for Dallas was an interception from Dak Prescott. Now this week, the first run of the game, which was like the second play of the game for Dallas, is a fumble. So what's it going to be next week on like the third play of the game? The fourth? It's just every week the Cowboys seem to shoot themselves in the foot. But back to speaking of the game, the Cowboys kept putting up these big numbers, these big yards, and you would think that, Dak Prescott's out there dealing to Randall Cobb and Michael Gallup. You would think that, Jeff Driscoll-led offense, who was starting in his second game because Stafford is still out, wouldn't be able to keep pace. Well, you would be wrong, because he did. The Lions refused to go away in this game. Jeff Driscoll and Bo Scarborough ran all over this Cowboys defense. It was really surprising watching them just get these big running lanes going and just break arm tackle after arm tackle on these guys. The Lions had 312 total yards of offense. 121 of those came from rushing. That's problematic when you're letting Bo Scarborough and Jeff Driscoll combine for over 100 rushing yards. That's very problematic. It was a tight game late in the fourth quarter, but Dak Prescott hit Ezekiel Elliott on a touchdown pass. Very nice grab by Ezekiel Elliott, picked it up off the ground. And then Tony Pollard converted a 2-point conversion, and that basically put the Cowboys up by too much. If I remember correctly, the Lions got a score late to get it closer, but it was just too little too late for them. But I have to say that, Dak and this offense put up good numbers without Amari Cooper doing much. Darius Slay, the Lions' defender, played some great football in this game. Made Amari Cooper a non-factor. Amari Cooper had 3 catches for 38 yards. And if you hear that the Cowboys had over 400 passing yards and a couple touchdowns, you would think Amari Cooper would have a big hand in that. Not in this game. It was all Michael Gallup and Randall Cobb. Michael Gallup had 9 catches, 148 yards. Randall Cobb had 4 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. That's really, really good. It's a really good sign that Dallas can put up points without Amari Cooper being heavily involved or Ezekiel Elliott being heavily involved. Ezekiel Elliott had 16 carries for 50 yards or something like that. It's a really good sign that, Dallas can do this without those two being major factors. Now, granted, The Lions are one of the absolute worst defenses in the entire league, especially when it comes to pass defense. But it's still a good sign no matter who you play, in my opinion. Speaking of the Lions offense, back to them for a second. Jeff Driscoll, he was more of a meh performance. He missed a couple open throws. And there were times by both quarterbacks where you could see they should have taken off and run more to get some first downs, and they didn't really use their legs as much as they should have. Jeff Driscoll finished the day 15 of 26 for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. Got sacked 3 times. He had 6 rushes for 51 yards and a rushing touchdown on top of that. Those 2 passing touchdowns went to Marvin Jones Jr. The passing offense has kind of died a little in Detroit ever since Driscoll took over. You know, Kenny Golladay was a major non-factor in this game, which is sad because he's been great for most of the year. But there were times where the Cowboys defense made Jeff Driscoll and the rest of that Lions offense look good, and that is not good at all. That's a terrible sign if you're a Cowboys fan. And it's starting to look like this defense is still a problem. Despite the better numbers that they had put up these last couple weeks, they're still a problem. And it's going to hold Dallas back going forward. Maybe Dallas has to win shootouts going forward. I'm not sure. But the good news is that Dak Prescott is playing at an elite level right now. In all honesty, he deserves to be put in the MVP conversation. You know, Lamar's at 1, Russell's at 2, and you know what? Put Dak at 3. I think that's fair. I'm not saying he should win it, but he deserves to at least be in the conversation. He's undoubtedly playing the best football of his career. And last note on this game, Ian Rappaport reported on Sunday that Matthew Stafford's injury, which is why he's out because he has the fractures in his back, is believed to be about a 6-week injury. So there's talk he might not play again this season. Or if he does come back, it'll be like the last game or 2. We don't know. Maybe it'll be the Jeff Driscoll show for the rest of the year, which is be very sad for Lions fans. Once again, Cowboys win this one 35-27 in a surprisingly close, fun one in Detroit. Moving on. Next game up, you got the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. Bills win this one 37-20. Bills improve to 7-3. Miami falls to 2-8, and it snaps a 2-game winning streak for Miami. But the big news out of this game, the Bills finally bullied a bad team. They finally did it, y'all. And the Bills' offense exploded in this game. Josh Allen had 4 total touchdowns in this game as the Bills put up 424 total yards of offense. And John Brown, the Bills' wide receiver, has a monster day. Caught 2 touchdown passes. This was just a massive day for the Bills. You know, we had lampooned them lately for, you know, just playing terribly against these bad teams. When are you going to beat up a bad team? You know, assert your dominance, show you deserve to be in the playoffs. And you know what? They did it. They went to Miami against a 2-win team that they struggled to beat earlier in the season and just asserted their will. I told you it was not this hard to do it, Buffalo. I told you, and you didn't listen to me. Josh Allen finished the day 21 of 33 for 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns, then rushed 7 times for 56 yards and a rushing touchdown. But the key point, if you noticed, no turnovers. Did not turn the ball over once. That's good for Josh Allen. He's had a fumbling issue. John Brown, like I just mentioned, 9 catches, 137 yards, and 2 touchdowns. A monster day for John Brown. And not just passing and rushing, the Bills got the job done too. It resurfaced. They had 34 rush attempts for 168 yards. You know, the Bills were getting it done in every single facet of this game on offense. Oh, and guess what? They didn't just do it on offense. The Bills' defense had a big day too. They had a season-high 7 sacks in this game, forced 1 turnover, and only allowed 14 points to the Dolphins' offense. Just a big day all around for the entire Bills team. It was like they heard all of this trash talk for all of these weeks that they can't beat a bad team convincingly, and they said, okay, watch this. And they went out and beat a bad team convincingly. I told you it wasn't this hard, Buffalo. I told you. This is probably the best game the Bills have played all season long, in all seriousness. They went out there from the word go and just beat the heck out of the Dolphins. They had a 17-0 lead. at one point, it was like a 16 or 17 nothing lead early in the first half, and I was proud of them. But then the Dolphins started clawing their way back. They got a late touchdown in the first half. Then there was like a 103-yard kick return for a touchdown. And then I started getting nervous. I'm like, come on, Buffalo. You can do this. You can win by double digits. It is possible. And you know what they did? They finished strong. They outscored the Dolphins 14-6 in the second half to win by double digits. I told y'all it was possible, Buffalo. I told y'all. Just an all-around great day for the Bills. Fitzmagic, the Dolphins quarterback, threw for 300 yards. And Devontae Parker had a nice day. Devontae Parker, 7 catches, 135 yards. That was really about it for the Dolphins offense. Like I said, they had 101-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. That was really all they did. That was the vast majority of their game. Congrats to the Bills. They beat a good. They didn't beat a good team. I should stop right there. I can't believe I just said that. They beat a bad team convincingly. They needed that to really, put some doubts to rest. Now, go beat a team that has more than 4 wins, Buffalo, and maybe we'll talk about taking you seriously. Just maybe. But to the Dolphins, what's next for them? Is it back to the tank? Are you going to try and win some more games? They got to be, very confused right now with Tua Tagovailoa having that major injury over Saturday. That's who they wanted at number 1, but if he's not going to be healthy, they may look elsewhere at quarterback. Who knows? So, Bills won a big one on Sunday, but I want to take a quick second to talk about something that didn't happen on the football field involving the Miami Dolphins organization. Well, it kind of involves them. If you haven't heard the name Mike Walton yet, you're probably going to hear more of it going forward. Mike Walton was, keyword being was, a running back for the Miami Dolphins. He was cut by the team, I think it was early Monday or late Sunday after the game. So Mike Walton gets cut, and that was supposed to be the entire story. Well, you wake up Tuesday morning today, and now there are multiple reports that Mike Walton has been arrested and charged with aggravated battery of a pregnant woman for allegedly pushing his pregnant, I believe it's his girlfriend or his wife, I'm not quite sure, up against a wall and repeatedly striking her in the face. Yeah, it's just a very disturbing situation that is alleged to have happened. Once again, we have to say alleged because, while he has been charged and he apparently has been arrested, he has not been convicted of a crime yet. So you have to say alleged. But if it is true that Mike Walton did do what is being alleged that he did to this pregnant woman, then he should never ever play a single down in the NFL again, and he should rot in a jail cell for the rest of his miserable life. And I really hope that those people that were screaming at the top of their lungs that Myles Garrett should have been arrested and prosecuted and thrown in a jail cell for what he did on a football field, keep that same kind of energy when you have a truly atrocious crime take place involving an NFL player doing something, just allegedly doing something. You have to keep saying that because it's not definitively been proven that he did it, but allegedly doing something that is just heinous and pure evil. No, and there's no excuse for that. I don't care if she said something to him. I don't care if she struck him. You got to remove yourself from a situation like that and just walk away. There is no excuse for ever putting your hands on a woman, in my opinion. And if Mike Walton did do that, he deserves to rot in a jail cell for the rest of his life. He really does. So we'll keep you up to date on the story, and if anything major develops in it going forward, we'll update you on it. But as of right now, Mike Walton has been charged for domestic battery of a pregnant woman. So that's the news as we know it right now on Tuesday afternoon, and we're gonna move back to our regular program of recapping games. So the next game up, the Jets in Washington. Jets win this one 34-17. Bit of a surprising result. Not that the Jets won it, but that the Jets won it by this much. That it was just this one-sided. Jets win. The Jets are now 3-7 and have won 2 straight. So I guess they're feeling good about themselves. Got a little bit of a winning streak going. and Washington falls to 1-9. And let me tell you what, Washington is starting to look like a really bad football team, like one of the two worst teams in the league, kind of operation they're putting out there. So Sam Darnold has a pretty good game in my opinion. He shined as Washington continues to spiral downwards. Sam Darnold went 19 of 30 for 293 yards, and you're thinking, okay, what's so special about that? Well, he threw 4 touchdowns. Sam Darnold threw 4 touchdowns in this game, a career high if I remember correctly. Also had an interception and 2 sacks, so, pretty good game from Sam Darnold in this one. And the Jets' entire offense eclipsed over 400 yards in this game. The first time they've done that in 20 games. So if you do the quick math, you'd have to go back to 2017 to the last time the Jets put up 400 yards in a game. I bet they're feeling really good about themselves. I think this game showed how good Sam Darnold can be. Everybody's been dogging him that, he's been looking terrible these last couple weeks, ever since after the Dallas game and then going into the Jets game, that he's looked terrible and that they've been picking apart his mechanics. Well, this game shows you how good he can be. There was that talk when he got drafted that, he may not be a great quarterback, but his floor is so high that at worst he'll be an average quarterback that can get the job done. And you know what? He played good in this one. He played really good. So that has to feel good for him. Get some of those doubters off his back a little bit. But this it wasn't just, Sam Darnold. Ryan Griffin, one of the Jets pass catchers, had a pretty good day. 5 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown. And it wasn't just their offense. Their defense played pretty well. They had 6 sacks in this one and gave up 225 total yards of offense, plus they got an interception. Jamal Adams, the Jets' safety, had a pretty big day. 3 sacks he got himself. I mean, good Lord, they just could not protect Dwayne Haskins in this one. Dwayne Haskins finished 19 of 35 for 214 yards. Got 2 touchdowns, though. Got the first of his career. And it was the first Washington touchdown in, it was like 16, 17 quarters when it happened. Darius Geis scored that touchdown. It was a screen pass that went a long way. Darius Geis, that was his first NFL touchdown and his first action back in a couple weeks. But speaking of that long drought where they didn't have a touchdown, yeah, I have it right here in my notes. It was their first touchdown in 16 quarters. So basically 4 full games of action passed before the Washington football team got a touchdown. That's the longest streak since the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. So nearly 20 years, no team has been that bad on offense. But, Dwayne Haskins had a bad day. His offensive line just could not protect him at all. And the really sad part about this, if you watch this game or anything that had to do with this game, there was a moment on the sideline, and there's video of this, and you can hear Dwayne Haskins literally pleading with his offensive line to help him. He says, quote, "What can I do to help you?" And all the offensive linemen just look so disinterested, like they would rather be anywhere else. I feel so bad for Dwayne Haskins because I think the kid has talent. He just needs to grow and develop more. But the Washington football franchise is starting to become a quarterback graveyard. The Browns used to be called that for years because that's the place where quarterbacks went to die. Nobody goes there and succeeds. The Washington football franchise is now becoming the new quarterback graveyard. And I really am afraid that Dwayne Haskins is going to be the latest victim of that. Case Keenum, Colt McCoy, Robert Griffin, Alex Smith. Those are just some of the guys over the last couple of years. You want to really magnify it? Look at the last 20. There's a long list of guys who have not succeeded in Washington. It's very sad. Washington just seems so... They just don't feel like they care. Watching that game, it felt like Dwayne Haskins was the only player on that field that cared. I'm being dead serious. And the sad part about it, it's not just a lack of talent issue. It starts at the owner, and I ranted about this a couple weeks ago. That owner, Dan Snyder, thinks they can win right now. Right now with what they have. And they can't. And he's had that same opinion for 20 years. And it's why Washington has had like 4 winning seasons in 20 years of football. I said this weeks ago, Washington will not get better until they get rid of Dan Snyder because he enables that entire organization to be bad. And this is just pathetic football they're putting out. And they're probably going to end up having the number 2 overall pick in the draft because I don't see them getting another win. I really don't. They're playing that bad of football. But speaking of the Jets, they played a really great game all around. This was their most lopsided win of the season. So good for them, They're feeling really good. They got 2 wins. So good for the Jets. And we're moving on to our next game. Jags at Colts. Colts win this one 33-13. Another surprising result. Once again, not because the Colts won the game, but how the Colts won the game. This was the first game all year where a Colts game was decided by more than one possession. The Colts won by 20 freaking points. I mean, holy cow. Season high in scoring for the Colts. This is the first time all season they put up 33 points in a game, so good for them. Colts are now 6-4 on the season, snaps a 2-game losing streak, and the Jags fall to 4-6. Like we said on the preview show, this was a game of returning quarterbacks. Nick Foles was coming back, and Jacoby Brissett was coming back. But the big story about this game was the run game and the offensive line for the Colts. That's how they won it. The Colts ran all over the Jags with a very strong run game. The Colts had 2 different players rush for over 100 yards. Marlon Mack and Jonathan Williams each had over 100 yards. It's the first time the Colts have done that in a game since October 6th of 1985. And it's only the 3rd time in the history of their franchise that they've done it. So, kind of a historic day for the Colts. In more ways than one. Because this was the Indianapolis Colts' 300th win as a franchise since they moved to Indy in 1984. So, it's a pretty big day for the Colts. If you go back and watch this game, you would see running backs, going up and down the field all over the Jags defense. But they had some massive holes to run through. That Colts offensive line was doing some incredible work. I'm talking, these running backs would get 6 to 7 yards downfield before they were even touched by a guy. They were running through massive holes. Apparently Frank Reich, the Colts head coach, had gone to his offensive line and really challenged them this week, and they took the challenge and they ran with it. Because they were flat out pushing guys aside and creating some massive holes. Like the holes were so massive, I'm convinced I could run through it. They were that big. The Colts offensive line was doing the Lord's work out there, parting the Red Sea. It was ridiculous. Speaking to Jacoby Brissett, he did okay in this game. Nothing great, but okay in his return. Jacoby went 15-24, 148 yards, a touchdown, a pick, and got sacked 3 times. But it was all about the run game, like I said. Jonathan Williams, the Colts running back, the Colts backup running back, went 13 rushes for 116 yards. And Marlon Mack, 14 rushes for 109 yards and a touchdown. I wanted to call this segment the return of the Mack for Marlon Mack, finally having a big day, but there's some pretty bad news about Marlon Mack. He apparently broke his hand in this game and is going to be out for a couple weeks. And that's a big blow to a Colts team that was really, shaping up to be something special down the stretch. So Jonathan Williams and the other running back they have on that roster are really going to have to carry the load. I'm sitting here saying that the Colts just, beat up on the Jags, but it was actually a close game at halftime. It was 10-7 Colts at the half, but the Colts just go on this massive run in the second half, outscored Jacksonville 23-6 in the second half. It's finishing strong. That's a sign of a good team. But, speaking to the Jags for a second, their offense really couldn't get it going. Leonard Fournette really didn't do much, but it felt like Nick Foles had most of the heavy lifting for that offense in the game. It was really just him and DJ Chark. They were the only bright spots for that offense for Jacksonville. Nick Foles in his return went 33 of 47 for 296 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 2 sacks. So not a terrible day at all. It was an okay, good day. DJ Chark, like I just said, 8 catches, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. That was really it for the Jags offense. And, I don't really know what the Jags' identity is right now. Coming into the season, we thought the Jags were going to be like they were in the past, Not a great offense, but their strong defense will lead the way. Well, when your defense is average at best, like it's been through most of this season, and like it was in this game, what exactly are the Jags? It's kind of a mystery. And when you don't have an identity, you tend to lose a lot of games. And if you're 4-6, those are usually teams that don't have identities. But a lot of credit should go to the Colts. They won a game by a large amount, and they deserve a fair amount of credit for it. Colts are back on top in a wide-open AFC South. It's there for the taking. It really is. And we're going to preview it a bit later when they play the Texans. Both teams are 6-4. It's going to be a very big game on Thursday Night Football this week. But once again, Colts win this one 33-13, and we're moving on to probably one of the... I would think this was game of the weekend we're about to talk about. Denver at Minnesota. Minnesota wins this one 27-23. Vikings improved to 8-3, have won 2 straight. And Denver falls to 3-7. And good Lord, they just cannot hold on to a lead in the fourth quarter, can they? Broncos choke away another second half lead as Vikings pull off a miracle comeback in this one. Everything was going the Broncos' way in the first half. Let's talk about that first. Everything was going the Broncos' way in the first half. Every Vikings drive in the first half. Are you ready for this? Punt, 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 fumble, fumble, punt. That's the drive result for every Vikings offensive drive in the first half. So nothing. Absolutely nothing from the Vikings offense in the first half. Literally less than nothing. Put up a negative number. That's what the Vikings did in the first half. And it really helped out the Broncos. Because now the Broncos have a 20-0 lead at the half. Brandon Allen was doing some great work throwing to Cortland Sutton, their number 1 wide receiver. And the Vikings defense just had no answer for Cortland Sutton. Xavier Rhodes was getting beat by this rookie. I mean, good Lord, Minnesota. It was... I was watching, because this game was going on the same time as the Cowboys game, so I was keeping an eye on it out of the corner of my eye because of the score. And I told myself before the game, this is a home game for the Vikings at a 1 o'clock kickoff against a 3-win opponent. This has Kirk Cousins plays great written all over it. And you go into halftime and the Vikings have done nothing on offense, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be one of the biggest upsets of the season if the Broncos can hang on. So going into halftime, the Broncos are probably feeling good about themselves, and apparently what's alleged to have happened in the Vikings locker room at halftime is that they all gathered around and told themselves, we're not losing this game. Let's go out and win this. And they came out in the second half and went on a tear. The Vikings go on a 27-3 run to end the game and win it. That is crazy. One of the great comebacks. Oh, okay, easily the best comeback of the season. Nothing is going to top that. Probably one of the best comebacks in at least 5 years for a team. Just a truly stunning comeback. The Vikings had 4 total offensive possessions in the second half. 4 possessions. Each one ended in a touchdown. The Denver Broncos could not stop them at all in the second half. Kirk Cousins and Stephon Diggs just went on a tear. Kyle Rudolph caught another touchdown. And this one, his 5th straight game with a touchdown. Kyle Rudolph has caught fire lately. And it was just stunning to watch the Broncos collapse. Just truly stunning to see. It's not just, that they blew a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter. They were up 20-0. I mean, good Lord, Denver. But speaking to all of that, Minnesota scores their last touchdown, to take the lead at 27-23. Denver gets the ball back. There's plenty of time left, and they go on a drive. They put together a 19-play, 56-yard drive that took up 6 minutes and 1 second of the game, and they get down to the red zone. They have a couple shots at it, and they just can't get it in. They just can't get it in. And every pass that Brandon Allen threw fell incomplete. Clock runs out, and the Vikings win the game. And cap off a miracle comeback for them. In the first half, the Vikings did not play well, but in the second half, Cousins played brilliantly, and so did Stephon Diggs, like I mentioned. Kirk Cousins went 29 of 35 on the day for 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, got sacked 5 times. Stephon Diggs, like I just said, 5 catches, 121 yards, and 1 touchdown. Brandon Allen, the Broncos quarterback, 17 of 39 for 240 yards, a touchdown, an interception, 2 sacks. And Courtland Sutton, like I mentioned, was having his way with the Vikings defense. 5 catches, 113 yards. You want to sit here and say, the Broncos just choked away a game, and they really, really did. I mean, you look at the stats, the Vikings scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. Think about that. The Broncos gave up 20 points in the fourth quarter. Come on, Denver. Come on. All the Broncos know how to do is choke away a game. It just felt like the moment that the Vikings started getting a little bit of momentum, the Broncos just curled up into a ball and took a beating. They got scared because they know it's happened in other games, and they know other teams have come back to beat them, and they could feel it coming, so they curled up and played scared. They played to not lose, and they ended up losing as a result. You play to win the game, you don't play to not lose. This is just a story of the 2019 Denver Broncos. All they know how to do is choke away a lead in the fourth quarter. Stats say that this Broncos defense is good, and it's not. It's really not. I know their offense could have done more to help them in the second half, but at some point, Denver, you just got to make a stop on defense. And you couldn't do it. Again, for like the 5th game this season. If that defense could just learn to hold on to a lead in the second half, this Denver team could easily be like a 5-win operation. I'm being serious. 5 to 6 win team. But they just can't. The Vikings are going to go into their bye week feeling really great about this comeback win. And they're at 8 wins. They're 8-3. And you know what? I think the Vikings might be the best team in the NFC North. I've really fallen out of love with the Packers. Their defense isn't as good as it was, and their offense is back to being kind of Jekyll and Hyde. I really like the Vikings. They're playing good football at a good time. Their pass defense worries me, though. They got tore up by Dak Prescott last week, and then they made Brandon Allen make them look foolish in the first half. A little worried about the Vikings defense, but I think they might be the best team in the NFC North. Once again, Vikings win this one 27-23 in a wild comeback. And we're moving on. New Orleans at Tampa Bay is our next game up. New Orleans wins this one 34-17. New Orleans improves to 8-2 on the year, and Tampa Bay falls to 3-7. And they're just feeling awful about themselves. Saints found a way to bounce back after that ugly loss last week to the Falcons, and they just came out and just mollywopped the Buccaneers. This wasn't a fair game. This game was over before it even started, in all honesty. Both the Saints' offense and defense got back on track in this game and succeeded in almost every facet. Like I said, it was a Saints game from the word go. They led 13-0 after the first quarter and never looked back. The great news for the Saints is they only gave up 1 sack in this game after they gave up 6 last week to the Falcons. So they only gave up 1 this week against a defensive line that has Shaquille Barrett on it. So that's really, really good for them. So Saints have a big lead going in through the rest of the game, and their offense is looking good, and their defense played well too. Jameis Winston threw 4 interceptions in this one. Some of them weren't his fault, but some were. Like this last one where he threw an interception to Marcus Williams, and Marcus Williams ran it back 55 yards for a touchdown, and that was the last dagger in this game. But Jameis was playing hurt. He had a bit of a bum ankle, because that pass rush was after him all game, and he was getting hit a lot. Even though it says he only got sacked twice, he's got hit a lot more than that. And he was hurting out there. This was about as bad as Jameis Winston game as you can get. And this is, his 3rd or 4th game this year where he's turned the ball over at least 3 or more times. It's really not a good look if you were pulling for Jameis Winston to get re-signed. But for the Saints, they did everything right in this one. Drew Brees had a great bounce back game after no touchdowns last week. Went 28-35 for 228 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Michael Thomas caught 8 passes for 114 yards and a touchdown. Their offense got back on track. And, Alvin Kamara wasn't really a big factor in this one, but that's okay. They found a way to win without him. But this was a good game for the Saints. They beat up a bad team. They really needed a win like this to get back on track after that horrible loss to the Falcons. And the Buccaneers are a bad team. They just are. Their offense can be good at times, but not always. The quarterback's too inconsistent. They force too many turnovers on offense. And their defense, in terms of stopping the pass, is terrible. They're just not a good team. And they're just not good. There's no other way to say it. There's no way to flower themselves up. And I really think Jameis Winston is going to be their quarterback next year. But for the Saints, they got back on track, and they're back to being the old Saints, the ones they were before, last week. Once again, New Orleans wins that one 34-17. Don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that game because, just blowout. So let's stay in the NFC South and go to a different blowout. Atlanta at Carolina. Atlanta wins this one 29-3. Good Lord. Atlanta is now 3-7 on the year, have won 2 straight, and are looking kind of dangerous. Carolina is now 5-5 and have lost 2 straight. And we're going to talk about Carolina a lot in this segment. Falcons are on a massive hot streak, especially on defense. And as they just force Kyle Allen to make some terrible mistakes as he stinks up the joint in Carolina. Everything is going right for the Falcons right now. They got 4 interceptions in this game. 4. 5 sacks, and a 78-yard punt return for a touchdown. Oh, yeah, and they only allowed 3 points. Think about that for a minute. Their defensive and special teams are just wrecking teams these last 2 weeks. The Saints last week, they mollywopped, and then they beat a Carolina team that has shown that they can be good at times. This was, these last 2 weeks have been absolutely massive for the Falcons. Falcons jumped out to a 20-0 lead at half, and unlike the Broncos, they actually finished and held on to a lead. They jumped out to a 20-0 lead because Kyle Allen threw 3 interceptions in the first half, and they just bared down in the second half. Ryan played good. Matt Ryan, the Falcons quarterback, went 21-31 for 311 yards, got a touchdown, got sacked 3 times. Calvin Ridley, their number 2 wide receiver, 8 catches, 143 yards, and a touchdown. So, their offense is still clicking, and it has clicked for most of the year. The main problem for the Falcons had just been their defense for the entire season. They had looked terrible. And then the bye week happened, and they had made some changes on their coaching staff. Now different guys are calling the plays now. And all of a sudden, they're a night and day different team. This defense is kind of scary now. This is a completely different Falcons defense. They have 11 sacks the last 2 weeks. 5 in this one, 6 last week. 11 sacks in 2 games. That's scary. 11 sacks. Only allowed 4 field goals the last 2 games. 3 last week to the Saints. 1 in this game against the Panthers. They've given up 12 points. That's incredible. That is a night and day different team. This Falcons team is starting to put together something that's just really interesting to watch. And I really want to watch them play more football. I can't believe I'm saying that about a 3-win team. I want to see them play more. Because they might have something here. Because remember, people were saying, including me, that the Falcons could potentially have a good bounce-back season this year before everything went to hell in a handbasket. And now all of a sudden we're coming out of their bye week in week 11 and they just knocked off 2 teams that are well above 500 and have dominated every side of the ball. So that's the Falcons. Now let's talk about the Panthers for a second because they're not feeling too happy right now. Kyle Allen went 31-50 for 325 yards, 4 interceptions like I said, and 5 sacks. He played awful football in this one. Very bad football. Christian McCaffrey went 14 of 70, 14 rushes for 70 yards, 11 catches for 121 yards. So he almost had 200 yards of scrimmage. So the Falcons didn't even stop McCaffrey, and they still found a way to really dominate this game. Maybe we should hold off on handing the reins over to Kyle Allen as the starting quarterback for this team, because the Panthers were 5-4 coming into this game, had taken a tough loss to the Packers, came in. It's a home game against a 2-win Falcons team. And you really need this game to keep wild card hopes alive, and you throw 4 interceptions and stink up the joint. That's not good. That's not good at all. That's very bad, Kyle Allen. So maybe we should pump the brakes a bit on shipping Cam Newton out this summer, because maybe they need him more than they realize in Carolina. But for the Falcons, they're a different team right now. They certainly feel different, and they look different watching. I don't know if they can sustain this, but 2 straight weeks they pull off one-sided double-digit wins over heavily favored division rivals on the road. Remember, they beat New Orleans in New Orleans, and they just beat Carolina in Carolina. They're playing good football right now. That team, despite everything, they never quit on their head coach Dan Quinn. They never did. And they're getting some wins now because of it. It's very interesting to see what's going on in Atlanta. Once again, the Falcons win this one 29-3, and we're moving on to our next game. Houston and Baltimore. Yeah, we hyped this up as a potential game of the weekend because 2 great quarterbacks, should be high scoring, should be fun. And Baltimore wins it 41-7. I mean, we can't have anything fun, can we? Baltimore improves to 8-2 on the season. They've won 6 straight. Houston falls to 6-4. It was one-sided. Ravens uncork another 40-point burger of a game as Lamar institutes a one-sided beatdown on the Houston defense. And then the Baltimore Ravens defense really had a great game. We're going to talk about that here in a second. They put on an entire show in this one. The Ravens had 491 total yards of offense, which is, what they do. And they had 263 of those yards were rushing yards. You know what's really sad? The Ravens had 263 rushing yards. The Texans had 232 total yards. That's bad. That's real bad. Texans were supposed to have a slightly above average rush defense. Didn't show up. Texans were supposed to have a pretty good offense. Well, they couldn't get anything going because they couldn't protect Deshaun Watson. The Ravens defense continues to shine and be impressive. This was very reminiscent of those Ravens defenses from 2008, 2012. They're looking scary now. They forced 2 turnovers, 7 sacks. 6 of those were on Watson. And only allowed 7 points. They were after Watson all day long. And he just couldn't get anything going, and they couldn't protect him as a result. And we've talked about it all year long. If you can't protect Deshaun Watson, then the Texans aren't winning the football game. Deshaun Watson went 18-29 for 169 yards, an interception, and 6 sacks. It was just not good. This was probably Deshaun Watson's worst game as a pro. And it looked like it. He was just not himself. He was under pressure the entire game, and he just wasn't playing good. But that's all you can really say about the Texans' offense. They just couldn't get a single thing going. Their touchdown only came in the 4th quarter when the game was way out of hand. Way, way, way out of hand, and the Ravens' defense had taken their foot way off the gas. But, this Ravens team is great. Lamar went 14-24 for 222 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, got sacked once, 9 rushes for 86 yards. Gus Edwards, their backup running back, went 8 rushes for 112 yards and a touchdown. I'm not reading that right. That's 8 catches. My bad. My mistake. Gosh. It's just so much fun watching the Ravens. They're so fun. They have so much personality. in their post-game interviews. They're just such a fun team. It's hard to hate this team, in my opinion. It really is. You know what's hilarious? Watching Lamar Jackson sit on the sideline in the fourth quarter of a blowout win, eating a banana. I don't know why. It was just so funny, and that's what he was doing in this game. Just chilling on the sideline in a massive coat, eating a banana. And it was hilarious for some reason. I love the Ravens. I really do. I think the Ravens are the best team in the NFL. I really do. As of right now, they're the best team in the NFL. They're fun. Their offense is great, and we know that they can put up 40 points at will, seemingly. And the scary part is their defense feels like it's getting better and better each week. The Texans aren't a pushover on offense, and the Ravens made them feel like a pushover. They did that to the Patriots. They've done it to a lot of people these last couple weeks. They did it to Seattle, remember? They did it to the Seahawks too. So this Ravens defense is starting to look like a complete package team, and they're putting it all together at the right time when you want a team to get hot right around Thanksgiving and right after Thanksgiving is when you want to start playing your best football. And the Ravens are doing just that. Once again, Ravens win a blowout win 41-7, and they're looking great. And the Texans have to figure things out quick because they got a Thursday Night Football clash coming up here in a couple days. And we're moving on to the first of our late games, Arizona at San Francisco. San Francisco wins a close one, 36-26. San Francisco improves to 9-1. And Arizona falls to 3-7-1 and have lost 3 straight in a heartbreaking loss for the Cardinals. So Jimmy Garoppolo hits Jeff Wilson Jr. for a touchdown, for a go-ahead touchdown, a 25-yard pass with 31 seconds left to go up 30-26. The 49ers had just marched into Arizona territory. It was first down, and the Cardinals called a pretty big blitz. And a defender is right in Jimmy Garoppolo's face. And Jimmy Garoppolo said after the game he could not see Jeff Wilson, the guy he was throwing the ball to, when he threw the ball. But he just knew he was going to be there. And the great thing for Jimmy Garoppolo was the guy that was covering Jeff Wilson Jr. on the play fell down. So Jeff Wilson was wide open. So Jeff turns, sees the ball coming towards him, catches it, and just jaunts into the end zone untouched. Just a heartbreaking way to lose the game for the Cardinals, but it wasn't over then because the Cardinals get the ball back with 30 seconds left. But they fumble the football. DJ Reed, the 49ers defender, recovers it, runs it into the end zone for a touchdown, and that's how you get 36-26. So the scoreline says San Francisco wins by 10, but with, 10 seconds to go, San Francisco was only leading by 4. It was just a heartbreaking game for the Cardinals. Arizona jumped out to an early 16-0 lead, capitalizing on a bunch of San Francisco miscues and mistakes. But San Francisco battled back. They just refused to go away, and they regained the lead in the early third quarter coming out of the half. Then the game just devolved into a back-and-forth struggle of Cardinals jump in front. Then San Francisco regains the lead. Then the Cardinals jump back in front. In fact, Arizona regained the lead with 6 minutes and 30 seconds left in the game. Kyler Murray ran 22 yards on a touchdown run. And you're thinking, oh, this is great. What a great moment for this young rookie going on the road against a really good defense and pulling out a late touchdown, looking good. And San Francisco gets the ball back. They didn't score on the next drive, but I think it was the drive after that they scored the go-ahead touchdown. At some point, Arizona's defense just has to make a stop, They just couldn't. They just couldn't make a stop. In fact, I think it was Chandler Jones, who might be the best player on that defense, who fell down on that Jeff Wilson touchdown. Chandler Jones has 11.5 sacks on the year, maybe 12. I haven't checked the stats yet today, but he'd been playing the best football, and I think it was him who fell down on that drive, on that touchdown pass, which is sad because Arizona had this game won, in my opinion. It's 30 seconds left. Your rookie quarterback made a great play to put you ahead, and your defense just has to hold out for 30 seconds. And you can't do that, can you, Arizona? You just can't do it. The Cardinals have a problem with finishing football games. It's been an issue all season long, and it was an issue in this game because they got outscored 19-7 in the fourth quarter of this game. That's an issue that you see a lot with young teams, with young quarterbacks, and a lot of young players, which is what the Cardinals are. There's a lot of young players all over that team, especially at quarterback and at head coach. The head coach is first year in the NFL, so it's growing pains, and you want to tell them that it'll be better, but it might not be. But before we get into that for a second, I want to talk about the 49ers. The 49ers, they shook off a really rough start in this one, and Jimmy Garoppolo threw 2 interceptions in this game, but he bounced back and threw 4 touchdowns. He went 34 of 45 for 424 yards, 4 touchdowns, like I said, 2 interceptions and 2 sacks. Deebo Samuel, the 49ers wide receiver, caught 8 passes for 134 yards. That was big for them. I think a really surprising thing, probably because the 49ers were down so much early, they didn't have a run game going in this one. They had 19 rushes for 34 yards. That is not the 49ers team that we have grown accustomed to this year, but it's what we got. The 49ers showed a lot of grit winning this game. They pulled it out when it wasn't going their way against, a plucky Cardinals team that I think is a lot better than the record says they are. When things didn't go the 49ers' way, they found a way to win it. And that's all that matters. That's how you get... That's a sign of a good team. When things aren't going your way and you find a way to win. And that's what the 49ers are. They're a good team. Kyler Murray, he finished his day 24-33 for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, got sacked 4 times, 8 rushes for 67 yards and a rushing touchdown. I really think Kyler Murray should be running more in that offense. He was electric on that touchdown in the 4th quarter. He is a true speedster, and I don't know why they aren't running him more. He is an effective weapon, but they just don't use him. The Cardinals are better than the record says they are. The record says they're a 3-win team, but these last 3 weeks they've been loss after loss. They've been playing their best football. They just can't finish, like all young teams. And I want to say their defense will get better because logic dictates that, you have your first year and, things don't go your way and it's all growing pains and you learn a lesson so that next year you can finish the close games. That's what logic dictates, and that's what, you should say to Cardinals fans to make them feel better. But I watched Cliff Kingsbury, the Cardinals head coach, for years in college football when he was the head coach of Texas Tech. And let me tell you, he does know how to coach an offense. He really does. They can uncork they could uncork a 50-point burger at will at sometimes. But the problem with those Texas Tech teams was they had to be scoring a team that could score a lot of points because their defenses were so terribly bad that they would just let a team score 55. So Texas Tech would have to win these crazy shootouts almost every week. Those defenses in Texas Tech remind me a lot of what we're seeing from the Arizona Cardinals defense. Just will let you run up and down the field on them and score a bunch of points. So I want to say that their defense will get better next year and that they'll be able to help out their offense when they need them to. But what I've seen from college says this is probably what we're going to see from Arizona as long as Coach Cliff Kingsbury is their head coach. But Kyler Murray and that offense is young, and they've gotten way better in such a short time. They're going to be a better team next year. Don't know what that defense is going to be, but they'll be better next year. And they're better than the 3-win team that their record says they are. But for the 49ers, cut out the sloppy play. You're lucky you played a Cardinals team that doesn't know how to finish. If you did this against the Saints or the Packers, which you played this Sunday night, they're going to make you pay. They will make you pay. Once again, 49ers win a close one, 36-26, and we're moving on. Cincinnati at Oakland, next game up. Oakland wins a tight one, 17-10. Oakland improves to 6-4 on the year, feeling pretty good, and Cincinnati stays the lone winless team in the NFL at 0-10. Another instance of a team overcoming sloppy play to win the game. But they did it not through offense, through defense. Max Crosby, the rookie's Raider, on their defensive line, had 4 sacks in this game. 4! You know why it's funny? Because he was drafted in the 4th round. 4th rounder gets 4 sacks. Just a great game for Max Crosby, who could not be stopped. It's his 2nd straight game where he just feels like an absolute wrecking ball on that defensive line. Raiders' entire defense had 5 sacks and 2 turnovers in this one from the Bengals. But the reason why the Bengals were hanging around in this game is because the Raiders had 2 turnovers of their own. Carr threw an interception, and Josh Jacobs fumbled the ball, which is something he hasn't done all season long. I think that was his first fumble of his career in the NFL. So they were capitalizing on turnovers, were the Bengals, and they were moving the ball well through their run game. They had 22 rushes for 173 yards and a touchdown. And you heard Zach Taylor, I heard it mentioned during the broadcast that head coach Zach Taylor had said that they want to recommit to the running game because they're starting Ryan Finley at quarterback. And I really want to know, where was this commitment when Andy Dalton was playing? I mean, there was no run game when Andy Dalton was at your quarterback, and now just because you got some no-name rookie in there, you want to help him out more? What's up with that? So they were able to move the ball well. They got their lone touchdown, but as we've seen from the Bengals all year, it was a hot and cold thing from their offense where they'll show up in spurts and then show up for the rest of the game. And the Raiders finally got out of their own way and found a way to win it through defense. I know the score says it was a close game, but when you watch it, it really wasn't that close. It wasn't. The Bengals still felt listless, and the Raiders' rookie class once again saved the day. Ryan Finley, the Bengals quarterback, went 13 of 31 for 115 yards, an interception, and 5 sacks. Derek Carr, the Raiders quarterback, went 25 of 29 for a touchdown and an interception and 3 sacks. And Josh Jacobs, the running back, 23 for 112. It's kind of a typical day for both teams. You know, what we've seen all year just kind of came together and meshed a little bit. Maybe the Raiders were overlooking the Bengals a little bit and looking on to, you know, next week or the weeks to come and just, you know, didn't give them their due respect. But they were able to grind out a tough one in this one, and the Raiders win 17-10. Not a lot to talk about in this game. Really not. And we're moving on to the last of our late games, New England at Philadelphia. I almost called them New Orleans. New England at Philadelphia. Also a game where not a lot happened because both offenses sucked in this game. New England wins this one 17-10. New England bounces back from that tough loss to Baltimore. They're 9-1 and feeling good. Philadelphia back in the loss column and 5-5. New England battled back from an early 10-0 deficit in this game and scored 17 unanswered in a very, very sloppy offensive game. Neither offense looked good. Here are some stats. You ready for this one? Tom Brady went 26 of 47 for 216 yards and a sack. Did not throw a touchdown. Didn't. The Patriots only scored 1 touchdown in this game. And that was to Julian Edelman. Oh, I'm sorry, no. Julian Edelman threw the touchdown pass because, you know, he played quarterback in college. He threw it to Philip Dorsett. That was the only touchdown the Patriots scored all game long. Carson Wentz went 20 of 40 for 214 yards, a touchdown, and 5 sacks. You know, both these offenses were really terrible throughout the entire game. The Eagles suffered from more drops in this one, and the running game couldn't get going. But the Patriots just continue to struggle on offense. I think that's a major thing to note. And, you know, I've been hesitant to criticize them, but Tom Brady himself said after this game that this offense needs to get better, and it really does. They have just been underperforming left and right all season long. But Tom Brady was under a lot of pressure in this one. I know it says he was only sacked once, but he was getting hit a lot. His offensive line was not helping him much in this game. But, you know, you flash forward to the end of the game. The Pats are up 17-10. The Eagles have the ball, and it's 4th down. And they're within shooting distance of the end zone. And Carson Wentz just heaves it to the end zone to Nelson Aguilar. Was it the best thrown ball? No, it wasn't. But it was pretty good. It hit Nelson Aguilar right in the hands. And in another big moment, in a game that the Eagles could have tied it if he just hangs onto the football, Nelson Aguilar drops it. Just another disappointing ending to an Eagles game where it just feels like they're kind of outclassed on offense, even in a game where the Patriots sucked all the air out of the stadium with their terrible offense. I think Philadelphia is going to go into this offseason and just really retool that wide receiver room. You know, you can't trust Deshaun Jackson to stay healthy. Nelson Aguilar can't hang onto a ball if his life depended on it. Your only real good player is Alshon Jeffrey, and he seems to always be hurt. So maybe they spend a couple draft picks on some wide receivers. Who knows? But there's really not a lot to talk about in this game. Both offenses were just really terrible, terrible, terrible. And it wasn't an instance of the defenses playing well, in my opinion. It was just that the offenses were so out of sync in this one. Once again, New England wins this one 17-10. And we're moving on to Sunday Night Football. In another sloppy offensive game, Chicago at the Rams. Rams win this one 17-7. Rams improved to 6-4, and Chicago falls to 4-6. Opposite ends of the spectrum. How about that? But the Rams ride a power run game in this one and defense to win this game in a sloppy, sloppy Sunday Night Football game. The stats aren't really there for the Rams offense, but Todd Gurley had his best game of the season. 25 rushes for 97 yards and a touchdown. Then he also caught a couple passes for 37 yards. So he totaled well over, 130 scrimmage yards, which is the most he's done all season long. The Rams' commitment to the power run game, you could see it in their offensive line, which was pushing the Bears defenders left and right. Jared Goff was not sacked once in this game. That's a big deal for the Rams, whose offensive line has been, the major crux of why their offense hasn't worked, in my opinion. It's because their offensive line has been terrible. But they played great Sunday night. They played really, really great. Jared Goff went 11 of 18 for 173 yards and an interception. And this one, both offenses really struggled, though, outside of, the Rams' power run game. But the Rams made more big plays, especially in the second half. There were a couple deep passes by Goff to get him closer to the end zone. Got their running game going. Gurley looked great, and that O-line did great work. And the Rams just made a couple more big plays that got him into the end zone twice. That's all that really, mattered for the Rams. But for the Bears, their offense was pitiful. Mitch Trubisky went 24 of 43 for 190 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and got sacked once. There was no run game. There was no help from his offensive line at all. His wide receivers were dropping passes that were perfectly thrown, in my opinion. As much as I, trashed Mitchell Trubisky, he was throwing some good passes. They were just being dropped. And, you got to help the poor kid. He's struggling out here. No help from O-line, no run game. His wide receivers are dropping passes. And there was a lot of questionable play calling from Matt Nagy. This is like the second or third time this year where I'm sitting there thinking, what is he calling? This makes no sense. It was just a very pitiful day from the Bears offense again. And they were just getting pushed around by a Rams defense. But the major story in this game wasn't, the end result. It was that with about 3 minutes and 30 seconds left in the game, the Bears offense comes back out on the field because they just got the ball back. And Mitchell Trubisky isn't out there at quarterback. He's on the sideline. Chase Daniel isn't at quarterback. And all of a sudden, everybody starts flipping out because nobody knows what's going on. Has Matt Nagy finally decided to bench Mitchell Trubisky? Has the time come? Nobody knows anything. Even the Sunday Night Football announcers don't know anything. Then word finally leaks out on Twitter that apparently Mitchell Trubisky has a hip injury and he can't come back in and play. So now we go to Matt Nagy in the postgame, and he's telling us that he became aware of a Mitchell Trubisky injury a couple series before he got pulled. So he got pulled late in the game, and he became aware of the injury a couple series before then. So let's assume early fourth quarter. That sounds like a couple series before then. Early fourth quarter is when Matt Nagy, we think, became aware of the injury, the hip injury. Okay. So we go to Monday. That's what the Bears are saying, that he suffered a hip injury right before halftime. That he took a knee to his hip by one of the Rams defenders. And there's video of it. You can see it happening, so you can see where he got hit. But we go to Monday, and then suddenly the story changes from Matt Nagy, the Bears head coach. Then it's I knew about the injury at halftime. Well, wait a minute. Sunday night you told us you didn't know about it until right before he got pulled, a couple series before he got pulled. Now you're telling us you knew about it at halftime. And you treated him for it at halftime. So which one is it, Matt Nagy? It's becoming questionable whether what did Matt Nagy know and when did he know it? Or if there was, I think there was an injury. To what severity, I do not know. I don't think that the Bears' offensive struggles Sunday night were solely on Trubisky. He didn't help his case, but he wasn't the reason they were struggling. So Matt Nagy is saying he benched Trubisky because he was hurt. But now we don't know what Nagy knew when he knew it. If Matt Nagy is truly saying that he meant to say halftime on Sunday night, then why did Mitch Trubisky, why did the Bears run an option play on 3rd and 1 late in the third quarter? If you know your quarterback is hindered with a hip injury and that's hindering his mobility, why are you telling him to run with the football? Are you kidding me, Matt Nagy? If you allegedly knew at halftime, then you would know calling an option play is a terrible idea with a quarterback with a jacked up hip. That's the situation we're at right now. We're trying to figure out when Matt Nagy knew what and when he knew it. Did he know a couple of series before he got pulled, or is it that he knew at halftime? We don't know. That's what the Bears have descended to. Dissecting their head coach's press conferences like they're the freaking Zapruder film. The Bears have just devolved into a massive circus and a clown show, and it just feels like everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for them. We don't know if Mitchell Trubisky will play next week. He has what's been diagnosed as a hip pointer. I don't know how painful that is, but it sounds painful. So we don't know if he's going to play next week. We don't know anything with the Bears. So maybe Chase Daniel plays next week. But as of right now, everybody has devolved into picking apart Bears press conferences. And their offense continues to struggle. Again and again and again. Just everything that could go wrong is going wrong for the Bears. Once again, Rams won a sloppy one on Sunday Night Football 17-7. And that's about it for the Bears. I think that's the death nail in their coffin. They're done for the season. They're done. You know, they could have had some hope, but, you know, it's officially dead now. And we're moving on to Monday Night Football. Kansas City at the Chargers in Mexico City. It was a Chargers home game, though, technically. They had a bunch of Chargers fans there. They decked it out like it was the Chargers Stadium, and it was very nice. I bet it was nice for the Chargers to have a home game in a stadium that's actually built for, you know, football and not soccer. I bet that's nice. Kansas City wins a close one, 24-17. Kansas City improves to 7-4, and the Chargers are on the opposite end of that spectrum at 4-7 and have lost 2 straight. Phillip Rivers self-destructs in this one as he throws 4 total interceptions in this game as the Chiefs get a nice win on defense. In fact, 2 of those interceptions by Phillip Rivers came in the final 5 minutes of the game. That's not good. That's really bad. This is Rivers' second straight game with 3+ interceptions. That's really, really bad for Phillip. I stick up for him a lot, but he's really not doing himself any favors lately. Chiefs defense played pretty well in this game, in my opinion. 4 interceptions, 2 sacks, and they only gave up 17 points. That's good. Considering things looked a bit dicey in the first half. The Chargers had 312 total yards of offense in the first half. My goodness gracious. But the Chargers went dead in the second half. They racked up about 126 total yards of offense in the second half. That's really, really not good. And the sad part is the Chargers felt like they had 4 shots in the fourth quarter, if I'm doing my math correctly, to win the game in a 7-point game. They just couldn't get it done. And Phillip Rivers threw 2 interceptions, especially that last one where he just floated it a little too much into the end zone and it got picked off. It was just an ugly look. It's the story of the Chargers season, you know, that they can't finish these close games. You know, if I remember correctly, all of their losses have come by 1 possession. And the Chargers have lost, oh God, what was the stat? It was like 31 one-possession games since 2015. That's heartbreaking. It must be tough being a Chargers fan. It really must be. And it's weird because, last season the Chargers won all of those games where they were it was decided by one possession. But this year they've lost all of those games that were decided by one possession. Really a shocking turnaround for the Chargers. The Chiefs' offense really struggled in this game, in my opinion. They came out looking a little listless in the early going, and then they put it together in the second half. They had 310 total yards of offense, which isn't a bad day, but to the Chiefs' lofty standards, that's not a good day. Patrick Mahomes finished 19 of 32 for 182 yards, a touchdown, an interception, and a sack. It was actually a career low in pass yards for Patrick Mahomes, in which he played the entire game. So take that for what you will. Was it the altitude? Who knows? Who knows with the Chiefs? But their offense figured it out in the second half and got things rolling and scored a couple touchdowns. They got 2 rushing touchdowns, which must have felt great. If I can enunciate, I felt like the Chargers were really struggling to tackle Shady McCoy, who got one, and I think Damian Williams got the other. Shady McCoy left this game with what they said they were looking at was a concussion, but tests were negative, so it doesn't sound like he has one. Tyreek Hill left this game very early with a hamstring injury, which might have been why the Chiefs' offense struggled so much, because they didn't have their number one guy. Their entire offense was back together for all of what felt like 5 minutes until Tyreek Hill got injured. They had everybody healthy, and then everybody got hurt again. Story of the Chiefs season. But speaking of the Chargers, they just couldn't protect Phillip Rivers again. Last week they couldn't protect him against the Raiders, and he looked uncomfortable and played badly. This week they couldn't protect him again, and he looked uncomfortable and played badly. Phillip Rivers finished 28 of 52 for 353 yards, a touchdown, like I said, 4 interceptions, and 2 sacks. It felt like at times he was just throwing it up there. Like, a lot of what Phillip Rivers did Monday night just felt like he was just throwing it up there and heaving it downfield all the time. And he got bit 4 times. That's just the way the cookie crumbles, Austin Eckler, their backup running back, went 8 catches for 108 yards. I feel if, they fix their O-line, they could really solve a lot of their problems. I've heard some people say that, they should get rid of Phillip Rivers, and you know what? After this last game, I could understand why people would feel that way, but if you can't fix this offensive line, it does not matter who is playing at quarterback. I mean, look what's happening with the Giants. They replaced Eli Manning with Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones has talent. We've seen it shine. But it can't work when their offensive line can't protect the kid. So if you put some young kid behind an offensive line that can't block, he's not going to do good. It's as simple as that. So if the Chargers, really are committed to, getting a new quarterback this offseason and decide to draft one, I think they better put a lot of focus into beefing up that offensive line for the kid. That's all I'm going to say. I think the Chargers season is officially done. I know people are still putting them in the playoff, picture, saying that they're in the hunt, but their season's done. They needed this game to stay alive, and they dropped the ball, and they lost. So Chargers season is officially done, but the Chiefs are probably feeling good about themselves. They're going into their bye week now. They needed this win to, stay on top of their division, to keep the Raiders at bay. And now they can go into their bye week happy about their defense, who played good, especially in the second half in a close game in a primetime situation. They're feeling good about their defense. Once again, Chiefs win this one 24-17. And that's it for our recap portion. We made it, people, all the way through week 11. So now it's time to focus on week 12. Thursday Night Football. Pretty big game coming up. Colts and Texans. AFC South, first place in the AFC South on the line. This game could go a long way in determining who wins this division, in my opinion. So here's where we're at. No Marlon Mack, like we mentioned earlier. He's got a broken hand, so he will not play in this game. They say he will not be out for the season, so he could return in a couple weeks. So that means Nyheim Hines, who is more of a hybrid back, who does more catches coming out of the backfield, and Jordan Wilkins, who is more of a straight-up running back, are going to have to step up for the Colts. Let's see if they go with their offensive line bruising mentality that they used on the Jags in this game. But I think the Colts are going to have to score a lot of points in this one to keep pace with the Texans. I know they held them to, 24 points last time they played? Jacoby Brissett's probably going to have to toss a touchdown or two in this game in order for the Colts to win it. Every game but one for the Colts has come down for one possession this season, and I don't see them just coming out and blowing the doors off the Texans. So we'll see what happens. This game will come down to whether the Texans can protect Deshaun Watson. That's what it's always been about. If they can, keep it down to, maybe 2 or 3 sacks and, keep most of the pressure off of him, I think the Texans can win this game. But if it's like what they did against the Ravens and they give up 6 total sacks and he's under pressure all game, if I remember correctly, the last time these two teams played, Deshaun was under a lot of pressure in that one too. So we'll see how they can protect him in this one. Last time these two teams played, like I just mentioned, the Colts won a tight one. That was in Indianapolis, but now it's in Houston. Both teams really need this. Like I said, this is going to go a long way, in my opinion, in determining who wins the AFC South. So both teams really, really, really need this win. They're both at 6-4 right now, and a loss at this point could be heartbreaking. But we'll see what happens. I think that the winner of this game, neither team could win this game, and it would surprise me, if that makes sense. I really think this is like a coin flip game. Both teams make a lot of sense winning it. But I'm going to go with the Texans in this one, actually. I know I've ridden the Colts hard all year long, and I've really been on their bandwagon. But if you look at the season, in my opinion, the Texans have done well in games after that they have played terrible. So you go back and look at a game where they do what they did in this game. I know there's been a game earlier in the season against the Jags where the Texans looked awful. They had, barely 200 offensive yards in a game against the Jaguars, and the next week they played well, if I remember correctly. So they played terrible against the Ravens, so I think it stands to reason to assume they could come out and play well against the Colts. So I'm going to take the Texans to win this one, but I wouldn't be stunned if the Colts win it. But I'm going to take the Texans to win a big game in the AFC South on Thursday Night Football. And that's it for our Tuesday show. So next time we talk, it will be Friday, and we'll recap this Thursday Night Football game we just talked about, and then we'll preview the rest of the Week 12 slate of games. And that's it for today. So see you Friday. Bye.